Good afternoon, and welcome to Math with Mr. D. Today, we're going to determine the area of a closed figure. Let's take a look at our first example. Here I have your standard rectangle. I labeled 6 inches as our length and 4 inches as our width. And to find the area, all we have to do is multiply length times width. So that's a formula that you're going to want to write down, that you're going to want to remember. And we just could write it like this. Area equals length times width. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve 6 inches times 4 inches, and 6 times 4 is, yep, you guessed it, it's 24. Now, as far as my labeling goes, I do have to label it inches, but I have to label it inches squared. I could do that one of two ways. I could write inches squared, or if I want to get really fancy, I could label it like this: 24 inches to the second power. That's one way to find the area of your basic rectangle, basic square, any kind of shape like that. But now we get into a little bit of a deeper, more complex problem. This is not our basic rectangle or basic square. Here we have this figure that is all angled out and not nice and neat. So there is a way to find out the area of an object like this. We're going to look inside of our object, and if you can see here, our object is outlined in black. So what I'm going to do with an object like this is I'm just going to count how many squares are in this shape. So I'm going to label it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm not going to label this square because remember it's outside, but this square is inside of our shape. There's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 21, 22, and 23. We can say that the area of this shape is 23 square units. Now this shape is easy because all of the squares were filled. They were whole squares. But now we get into a more complex situation where I still have my same shape, but if you can tell here, I have some squares that are partly filled in. And we still have to find the area of that. So my first thing that I am going to do is I'm going to count how many whole squares I have. Again, I'm just going to write the number inside of these whole squares. It's going to make it easier for me so I don't forget the number that I'm currently on. So 1 whole square, 2 whole squares. I go down here to 3, 4, 5. I can't label this. This is partly filled. So remember, I'm just labeling the squares. Oh, I forgot this one. And this is why we number it, so we don't forget where we are. Labeling it may take a little bit of extra time, but it's going to ensure that you do come up with the right answer. So you can see I have 19 full squares. So I'm going to keep that number 19 off to the side for now. And I want to count how many partially filled squares I have. I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. That 4 is going to come in handy in the next step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 4 partially filled squares and I'm going to divide it by 2. 4 divided by 2, everyone, is? Yep, you guessed it, it's 2. So now I'm going to move my curtain down. And remember my 19 from before, my 19 filled squares? Well, I have to add my 19 to my 2. 19 plus 2, everybody, is? Yep, you guessed it again, it's 21. So the area for this would be 21 square units. Now, To help you remember, there's 3 easy steps that I'm going to portray on the next slide for you. 1, you always want to count the whole squares. After you count the whole squares, you want to count the squares that are partly covered and divide that number by 2. And then finally, you want to add the numbers from step 1 and step 2. And that's going to give you your answer. Well, I hope that you learned something today. Thanks for watching and have a great day.